Justin, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I'm excited to get in this topic because I think there's a lot of this audience that is really interested in vacation rentals, and their mind typically for the first thing doesn't go straight to safety. A lot of times it goes straight to the numbers and, what can I do with these properties to make money on them? And then unfortunately, I think in a lot of cases, people think about safety after it's too late or down the road after they've had a bad experience. So I understand that you have a pretty deep background in many aspects relating to safety, and it all kind of adds up to a perfect combination of understanding safety relating to vacation rentals. So I'd love to jump in just to your background and hear a little bit about how that has led you up to where you're at now.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And before any of your listeners tune out right away and go, this is some safety thing, I promise to make my time here with you interesting and valuable. And, whenever I talk to people, I later hear stories that it's led to saving someone's life or preventing an injury somewhere. So if we just do that once through this time together, then that will be of benefit to everybody here that wants to listen in.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've been involved with the vacation rental industry since 1997. People every day come up to me and say, wow, this is really cool. I got in at the beginning, and I try and tell people I've been in this industry now for over 20 years, and I don't think we've even hit the beginning yet. George Washington stayed in a vacation rental on his trip between Delaware and Massachusetts, and they've been around for hundreds of years, if not, more than that. But the reality is this is such an evolving industry, and it's changing constantly every day. But I owned and started the largest vacation rental company in the Northeast and grew that at one point in time, probably managed over 600 properties, had a boat rental company, had a real estate office. So was really involved with all aspects. I bought and sold vacation rentals. So saw all of that. At the same time, as most people do in their community, they find something to give back. Some people go on the school board. Some people join the PTA. I joined my local fire department. I had a background in the U.S. Coast Guard and found an interest in firefighting and safety as it related to my time in the U.S. Coast Guard. So I worked my way up and was the training officer and a firefighter for 15 years. So kind of a unique combination of combining property management, a safety background, and then actually getting involved with safety prevention as well.
I see. Okay. So when did you, I guess, start focusing on safety? Like when did it kind of switch over from, the property management and investing in vacation rentals to more of a focus on primarily on safety?
Yeah, unfortunately, it happened to me the same way it seems to happen to most people. I'm trying to change that. But I had an accident at one of my short-term rentals. A renter was severely disabled as a result of a hammock accident. And the hammock was not set up properly. I personally was the one who set that hammock up. I didn't take the care that I should have at the time. And it led to an accident. It led to a lawsuit. It led to a lot of different challenges. But most importantly, it led to me recognizing that, hey, wait a minute, how was I supposed to know this? And how can I make sure that the next person knows better? And at the same time, in the state where I am, the state of Maine, our local government started looking at, and legislators started looking at vacation rental safety in 2013 and said, hey, let's put out a bill that says every vacation rental should have a fire sprinkler system in them. And obviously that would have crushed the industry. There's maybe 2% of rentals in Maine that have a sprinkler system. So we looked at ways to reassure government entities that, you know what, we're taking a look at safety in the rentals, and we're going to work hard to make sure that we can prevent accidents. And I think that's worked. Over the past 8 years now since that happened, we fought off that bill, and professional wise, there haven't been any fire related deaths or accidents in any vacation rentals in Maine. So there's a good safety record. And I was kind of there at the forefront with that.
I see. Interesting. Wow. I didn't realize you had that personal experience with the hammock. And it, you mentioned something there that, you I guess didn't know what you didn't know, and you're trying to think through how could I have prevented this to start with, and it kind of brings me to my, I guess, one of the biggest questions I wanted to ask you about, because I was in the Army as well. I was in the military, and I just had like a love-hate relationship with our safety guy, because it always seemed like there could always be more safety measures in place. And so I feel like safety operates on this spectrum, and how one person defines safe could be totally different from someone else. It almost feels like, a bit of a trap sometimes. Like, for example, like if there was a fire, somebody could come in afterwards and say, yeah, you had a fire extinguisher on the wall, but it wasn't high enough, or it wasn't the right color, or it wasn't big enough for this fire. So, you could have been more safe. And so I guess I always wonder, number one, am I being safe enough? And like, what's the line between you need more safety and you are meeting the standard for safety, where you are safe enough? That's what I struggle with.
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's so much behind that to answer.
Yeah.
There's black and white when it comes to safety. In the United States or in Canada, there's certain laws. Every state in the U.S. has a smoke alarm law. It says that, hey, if this is a rental property, it needs to have a smoke alarm in the bedroom and in the hallway within 20 feet outside. So that's black and white. What's gray, and where you run into all these other challenges, is that the codes are so hard to interpret. People say, well, International Building Code, for example, requires that a grill, gas, electric, propane, whatever, has to be 10 feet from a combustible structure. But then when you look at that, the code isn't very specific to say what a vacation rental is. It makes reference to a transient home. It makes reference to occupancy. So some people stand back and go, well, this doesn't really apply to me because I have a single family home and it makes it under International Building Code in R2, which I don't know what that means because I just bought this house and this is all confusing. Yeah. But somewhere in there, I guess I'm supposed to maybe put it away. I don't know. So there's not really in a lot of places anything defining. So then you run into this gray area of, well, what makes sense? Well, now we're learning that a lot of lawyers are fighting on the fact that, well, your vacation rental is commercial activity. So yeah, you should have adhered to code. And yes, that girl should have been 10 feet away when an accident happens. So trying to go through this cloud of gray, take the basic black and white stuff is what I've done. But then I've taken all that gray stuff and I've tried to apply it in a way that makes it all work in a nice little beautiful package, so that somebody who wants to invest in a vacation rental or wants to get in this industry or has already been doing it for a while can at least go down the path to success and keeping their renters safe.
Got it. Okay. That makes more sense. And you mentioned like the building code, and another question I guess that has come up a lot for people that I've talked to is, Airbnb is always pushing these new experiences, and so they encourage people to come up with very unique rentals. So people are renting tree houses now, and sheds and basements and teepees, and it would feel like a tree house would be much, much less safe than a single family house, and there's probably not building codes for tree houses, so,
No.
Like it's, so what, I guess, standard, so you mentioned that you had created like some checklists or a system for safety. Is that, I guess, would that be a standard that people could live by then, or is it going to hold up, if there's some issue, or how I guess what standard? That's what I was trying to figure out, is like, what's the standard that I should live by?
Well, in the absence of, I don't know what the famous quote is, but in the absence of silence, it's the noise, the first person that makes a noise that will be heard. And I believe that's me. I'll toot my horn. I created a safety checklist. I believe I've created the standard. I did something that no one else has done yet. And that is, I looked at the government requirements But then I most importantly looked at what's happening with the insurance companies. Insurance companies don't like to brag about claims and accidents. They want to do whatever they can to get rid of them and make them go away. But on the other hand, when you can get insurance companies to, refer back examples and give you examples of accidents or share claim data. I mean, claim data is amazing. We look at one of the industry insurance companies, Proper, industry leading insurance companies. And you look at Proper Insurance, for example, and this is just one example, there's hundreds of them out there, but they charge an additional premium for bunk beds. So if you want a bunk bed in your short-term rental, you're going to pay an additional amount. I don't know what, it might be 100, 150 or something like that a year per bunk bed. But that's a cause for pause to go, well, wait a minute, why am I paying extra for that? Because there's a lot of bunk bed accidents. Bunk bed accidents are very common in short-term rentals. So when you really look at everything, it kind of plays into the idea or the fact that 3% of all of our accidents in short-term rentals come from things that are legally related: fire, carbon monoxide. Those are things we're required to attend to. But 83% of our accidents comes from trips, slips, and falls, which there's really no regulations at all, legal regulations anywhere in the world that address those. There are in commercial, but not vacation rental. The second part there I want to touch on, and this is kind of an interesting thing, and I see this all the time. Last week on social media, everybody was sharing that picture of the Grinch vacation rental in Utah, where this cave has been turned into a Grinch. And you're seeing a lot of these now, where these celebrity vacation rentals, the house from Home Alone, and they only rent it one night. And it's smart marketing from, Vacasa, Airbnb, VRBO, whatever. They draw all this attention in and get people thinking about it, but they only offer it one night. So it's a huge contest. I looked at the photos and did the web tour, and listeners can go on here and look themselves at that Grinch place. There's a propane tank that's not even legal or to code in the state of Utah that's sitting just outside the kitchen with the cap off. And when you look at the photos behind the refrigerator in that Grinch cage, there's about 30 feet of heavy electrical cord that's coiled up behind the refrigerator, which is a major fire hazard. And then there's no handrail on some of the stairs between the tunnels that would not be up to code in any commercial place. So I look at those and go, hey, that's cool, but watch out. There's definitely some safety hazards there.
Wow. Yeah. I saw I saw a post that you did about the #1 Airbnb in Delaware, actually, and it's a garage that was converted, and it looks really cool inside, but you pointed out there's no egress upstairs. Like the upstairs loft is basically like a cave, and so there's no way to get out. And so that I thought that was interesting too. So in situations like that, then who does that liability fall on? If Airbnb is, I guess, I don't know if they're pushing people, but they're promoting these unique experiences outside the box. Do they take any liability in that, or is it purely on the owner?
There's a lot of effort by both VRBO, which is owned by Expedia Group. So I'm referring to Expedia Group's trust and safety team. Airbnb has a trust and safety team. Booking, they all have trust and safety teams, and they're working with a lot of things. They're working with things that are stolen in a rental. They're working with sex trafficking. They're working with unfortunate things that happen. Rape happens in some of the rentals by neighbors, and there's horrible things that happen in this world, and they happen in rentals too. Yeah. But they're also looking at safety incidents, and their top challenge is really just trying to get renters or hosts to just put smoke alarms in these rental properties. They can't even do that. And when you look at the fact that less than 70% of vacation rentals, might even be less than 60%, have a smoke alarm, which is the single most important item in a rental, you realize how far those teams have to go to try and meet what they need to do. But the reality is, as fancy as they are and the experiences that they add on, and chefs and golf carts and all these different things go on a zip line, the reality is they're still a classified ad. So they don't bear any responsibility. We've seen lawsuits against them. They get out of them because, again, they're just that listing platform. And I think people rely on and don't know that. They don't know that yeah, Airbnb gives you $1 million if there's an accident. Well, good luck getting that $1 million. You know, we saw that case in Los Angeles last year where the vacation rental burned down from renters smoking a cigarette, and Airbnb wasn't paying out on it. So, you know, when there's negligence involved, it's really, really hard to get them to do that. And there's a lot of ownership on the host or the property owner to navigate through and figure this stuff out. You just can't walk in the door and go, I'm renting a home, and think it's that easy. There's so much more to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you about that because I know Airbnb has their host guarantee, which is for damages, $1 million damages. And then they have their host protection insurance for $1 million of injury. And I didn't know if you knew how often they paid that out, or if it, you know, was
I don't
access. Yeah.
I don't know, but I do know a lot from the insurance industry saying that they're getting these claims coming through because they haven't been paid out. And when there's a lawsuit, everybody gets sued. The infamous Tamarack fire lawsuit that happened up in Idaho 3 years ago, first female tank commander for the U.S. Army. She and her family rented a vacation rental up in Tamarack, Idaho, checked in, and the gas fireplace was had been taken out, but they hadn't capped the gas line.
Oh.
And so when the renters found a key in a top junk drawer and were able to turn on the gas, it just poured gas into the back of the fireplace, and then they lit a match or used a lighter, and it exploded, and it ended up killing her and 3 other members of the family. The husband was the only one to survive. The lawsuit and the number of people named in that was pages long. And, you know, VRBO, Airbnb, whichever management company, the host, the owner, the previous owner before that, I mean, everybody gets sued. And it's expensive to get out of those lawsuits and get those all sorted out.
Yeah. Wow. So when it comes to insurance, then obviously redundancy is important. I mean, I want to get back to obviously making your place as safe as possible, but also having liability protection in place. And so Airbnb shouldn't be the only protection that you rely on, it sounds like. So you mentioned proper insurance, which is a big name in the industry. So what type, I guess, if you have suggestions on insurers that you would say are the best insurers, and then what type of policy should people have in place, and maybe they don't know that they have the wrong policy in place?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know. You know, they go to State Farm or Allstate, and you know, that might be fine. That might be the coverage you need if you've got a basic condo. But if you're including a kayak or bikes or anything that a renter might use at the property, even right down to a beach chair. We've seen someone who used a beach chair that was supplied at the property, took it down to the beach, and it had a pinch hazard in it, and they actually lost a digit on one of their hands. So massive lawsuit. So, but the homeowner didn't know they weren't covered, and it's because of the 2 words, off premise. And there's not more than 1 or 2 companies that actually offer off premise insurance coverage. What happens when that renter's using something of yours and steps off the property? So it's very important to understand that difference, ask these questions, get things in writing, and pay really close attention to your insurance application. A lot of people don't recognize that on the application, most standard insurance applications, it says, does your house meet or does your rental meet current building code standards? And most people just check it off. I've even seen where the agent pre-checks it off for them. It's an assumption that's made. Well, if you don't have a handrail that's to code on one of your stairs, maybe it's some fancy rope thing that you think looks really shabby chic in your Airbnb, and the renter falls down the stairs, that's a $350,000 claim minimum. And if they come back and say, hey, that handrail wasn't to code, and your insurance company goes, well, you said everything was to code, they're not going to cover you. And I'm seeing a lot of instances now, even where hosts are suing their insurance company to try and get payout unsuccessfully, because they didn't realize they weren't covered for accidents that could happen, and suddenly are holding everything in on their own.
I see. Okay. And because I think some people think that they're covered, but they're not. And maybe is cost an indicator? Like what price point should a vacation rental insurance policy be in? And if maybe it's an alarm for people if theirs is
Yeah.
like substantially cheaper.
I often look at it, the best way I always approach this is percentages.
Okay.
When you take a look, you got a 3-bedroom home, and if each bedroom of the home is making you $20,000 a year and you're making $60,000 a year, you might be looking at 1 to 2% of that is going towards insurance. You might see $1,500 to a $2,000, $2,500 policy. A vacation rental policy should be a commercial policy. Unless you're renting on the moon, right now, someone is paying a tax to come stay in your rental, and you have to recognize that any lawyer that's going to litigate against you for an accident that's happened, they're going to prove first and foremost that you were engaging in a commercial activity. Your little homeowner policy isn't going to stand up to that. So when you look at Foremost or Proper, some of the biggest ones in the industry, those are commercial policies for renting out, not commercial in the sense of, you own a bakery and you've got to insure your bakery, but definitely commercial in the fact that you do have people coming to stay in your home from the general public who you've never met before, who you may never see again, and they're engaging in commercial activity by having paid you and the local government a tax to stay in that rental property.
Got it. Okay. And so what process have you created? Because I understand you've created a safety process that owners can adopt and go through. How does that work? Is it a checklist, or can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I firmly believe I've got the coolest position to be in the short-term rental industry. And what I'm speaking to is, you never know how clean things will be. A cleaner can go in and clean, and she might miss a hair, and then someone thinks it's dirty. And if you're a decorator, you may not have put the right pillows in, and someone doesn't like the taste that you have, or the curtains. If you're a homeowner, you may not have known that it's the right, excuse me, the right thread count for the sheets, or the towels might not be fluffy enough. But me, I firmly believe you can make a rental so safe that the only reason someone gets hurt is if they trip over their own shoelaces or they don't turn the light switch on.
Mm.
And so that's where it really covers everything. I think there's about 70 to 80 items of large attention. And it's everything from making sure there aren't candles and matches in the rental. And quick example on that, last year, big headlines were made out in San Francisco in the Lake Tahoe area. And it was related to a family checking into a rental, and the kid found a gun, loaded handgun, in the second dresser drawer down in the master bedroom. Now, the news story was all that this sheriff had left his gun behind. If you've been in this industry like I have been, that's not unusual. Probably half the renters bring a gun with them, and people leave them behind all the time. The professionals know this. It's not unusual to find a gun left behind in a rental. What's unusual, and actually shouldn't be unusual, but what's noteworthy, is that the kid found that gun within 2 minutes of arrival in the second dresser drawer down in the master bedroom. What the heck was that kid doing in there? And the father addressed that in his quote in the news article. He said, "My kids like to explore, they get into everything." Yeah. And so we see where kids who haven't had fire safety training have shown up in a rental and they've lit it on fire. We had 2 deaths in Maine a couple of years ago from that. They found matches in the junk drawer. Candles don't belong in there. We just saw an 8-year-old burn down a vacation rental in Orlando because they were playing with a candle. Don't put those things out. So it's an extensive safety checklist: bunk beds, pool safety. We've had a record year for pool drownings in the United States. It's well into the 70s in Florida, 50s, Arizona, Texas. Very big year. And a lot of these are all preventable if people put in the right safety measures to prevent them. And we get into hot tubs, we get into chairs. So there's an extensive list, but once you go through it, it's not that hard, and it's typically not that expensive to address it. The most expensive things that I see that are on this checklist that people need to address are often related to egress. We see people putting what we refer to as heads in beds. This is a really big problem. There was a big meeting about it in Sedona, Arizona last month. You can watch it online, where a property manager had put bunk beds totaling for at least 12 kids in this one room, and there was one little teeny porthole window. How do they get out in a fire? So it might be $4,000 or $5,000 to put the proper egress window in so they could get out. But that's the most expensive item we usually see that needs addressing.
I see. Okay. So if somebody is interested in this, what's the best way for them to find out more or get a copy of what you recommend?
Yeah, and one thing we're doing right now is I cover the most important 18 of those items in a free safety checklist we do at Breezeway. So if you go to our website at breezeway.io and go under the product section for safety, you can see that. Or just email me and I'll send you the link, safety@breezeway.io. It's free. It's the same safety checklist the insurance companies use. Proper Insurance uses it with us. They actually give a discount on premium to homeowners that go through the safety certification.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. I have a couple more questions that are like commonly come up when I talk to other owners. A big one's hot tubs. A lot of people want to put these in, but I actually have one in one of my vacation rentals, and I tried to think through, some of the safety things around hot tubs that I need to incorporate, like like our cover clips on. We have signs up that say, don't leave children unattended, things like that. What are, when you see hot tubs, because those are fairly common in vacation rentals, what are the things that people should definitely be doing to make hot tubs safe?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We started off this year with some hot tub deaths actually in the Aspen ski resort area. They found 2 people who had perished in a hot tub at a vacation rental. Had actually been there for 3 days. I believe it was determined that they had been electrocuted. I think people look at hot tubs and that's the first thought they have is, wow, this is a drowning potential. But there's so many different accidents that can arise. Believe it or not, hot tub fires are very common. Google it. It's very big. A lot of hot tubs catch on fire from electrical issues. You get mice and squirrels that get in there, mess with the wiring. So it's not uncommon to see a fire with a hot tub. And then it, of course, spreads into the rest of the property. A lot of people will buy a home and there's the hot tub on the deck and they just assume it's good to go. And they have no idea that, handy homeowner Joe just put that on the deck with his rented Bobcat from Home Depot for the weekend and don't know that the deck was never even made to hold that. And we've seen a lot of deck collapses with hot tubs on them. When it comes to safety around the hot tub, you really have to do the same thing that the local Holiday Inn or Hampton Inn does. Go down and look at their hot tub. You need the same safety signage, pregnant, have you talked to your doctor, not longer than 15 minutes, heart issues. You got to have that sign posted. The cover should not be able to be opened by anyone under the age of 7. It should have heavy duty clips on it. When we look at some of the drownings that have happened in hot tubs recently, some of them haven't even been by the guests that are staying at the vacation rental, but rather by somebody at a neighboring property. So here you have this vacation rental that's unoccupied and a kid has wandered next door and been able to get in there and the parents couldn't find them anywhere. They were trapped under the cover and had drowned. So very important to make sure that the hot tubbers are secured all the time and not by the little plastic clips that come with them. You go down to the hardware store, you get a metal cable and you rig it up with a padlock and make sure that nobody can get into it unless they should, and minimum, cinch down straps. And then one of the other big things that we've seen is people falling out of hot tubs. I'll pick on the Smoky Mountains. They've been getting a lot better with this, but very common in the cabin rentals in the mountains around Gatlinburg, Sevier County, where these hot tubs are on the 2nd and 3rd and even 4th floor decks, but they're right up against the edge of the deck. Well, as soon as you have someone, especially a child, standing on the bench seat that's right up against the edge of the deck, they no longer have that 36 inches of protection to keep them from falling out. And I see a lot of people who are building additional railing structure around the hot tub to ensure that doesn't happen. And then lastly, I'm curious to even know how you do this with your own. I might put you on the spot, but it's maintaining it. Chemicals. I'm a firm believer that you want someone who's licensed and insured to do that. You don't want your cleaner being the person that's putting chlorine in the hot tub. Legionnaire's disease is big. It's happened in properties before. In Montana, they actually require, it's a state law, you have to change the water in the hot tub between each rental. That's a big process. I've been over in Big Sky, Montana, and watched the rental companies do that. It's a very tedious process. Those rentals cost more as a result. It's worth it to the people who are going there to go skiing. But there's a reason why they do that. And so it's really important that you're not just, going down to Walmart buying some chlorine and just thinking you're in charge of maintaining the chemical balance in the hot tub. That'll get you. It'll get you bad.
Yeah. Wow. Really great suggestion. A couple of those I never even would have thought about, like a neighbor coming over. I didn't even think about that, but that's a real possibility. And yeah, to your point about maintaining it. So we use a company called Pristine Pool and Spa. It's a professional pool company, and they come once a week, and they're even suggesting to make it twice a week. And so when I talk to people about hot tubs, we have it in one because I wouldn't put it in another one, because I was looking at the cost of the hot tub up front, and I was like, oh, okay, I can find one, online for $4,000 or $5,000, and that's I can make up for it with increased bookings. But then once it got there, I brought a guy out to install it, and he said, oh no, we got to beef up the whole deck. And then you have overhead power lines running over. So we had to bring out an electrician to install a new power pole on the side of the house and bring the power company out to move the lines, because they said people use the skimmers, don't think about it, hit the power line and electrocute themselves. And so, yeah, there's all these things that were additional costs and additional considerations. And then on top of that, the safety risks as well. So I haven't noticed enough of an uptick in bookings to compensate, because we're paying this Pristine Pool and Spa. It's I want to say it's $60 or something every time they come out every week, and that adds up. It might be a little bit less than that, but it's somewhere around there. And but you got to do it right, like you said. You can't take a shortcut. So there's a lot more cost than just the cost of the hot tub to consider. And I need to update some things based on what you're saying there. So I appreciate that.
It highlights, across the whole spectrum, what you're saying. This is a constant thing that I see in the industry. I look, there's so many different groups on Facebook now. People post a picture and they say, hey, look at my rental property, and it's isn't this beautiful? And all I see is there's no windows. Where's the egress? That's great that you have a nice, Calvin Klein bedding on there and it looks beautiful, but how are people getting out? And they post pictures of their kitchen and say, this is great. And I look around and I don't see a fire extinguisher. And I'm like, hey folks, a fire extinguisher is $50. It's actually a tool the renters can use to put out a fire and preserve your rental. Most homeowners don't want to put one in because they think they're ugly. It's like, how close is a nearest fire truck? Because if they're 10 minutes away, the renter is just going to walk out of there. But if you've given them a tool. So I see a lot of people overlook these important safety things that you just have to do first. You have to and address these things, because if everybody could jump into this rental business and just throw a house up with really no effort, yeah, it looks pretty cool. It's pretty sexy. But we're not different than anybody else. We're the same as a bakery that has to have inspections and make sure that we're serving healthy food. We're the same as an auto mechanic shop that, you got to know how to tighten the lug nuts on the tire, because if you don't, the wheel comes off, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, that's great. Great point. Last question I've got for you here is one that my wife and I have debated on, and it's a check mark that's on Airbnb that is a searchable criteria on a property, and it asks you, do you provide pack and plays or cribs for toddlers? And I know that's a big search criteria for a lot of people, because a lot of people are traveling with kids and they don't want to fly with a pack and play. It's a pain. So we've never provided it, because my wife has said from the beginning, it feels like a huge liability if a kid, gets hurt in it. I didn't know it. Do you see this a lot? Is this something that you would just say, do not provide, or is there a way to provide it safely? Because I get this question a lot.
Yeah, and I'll loop in some other amenities with this, because the answer is broad across all of these. Okay. Bikes, kayaks, stand-up paddle boards, golf carts, beach gear, pool toys, any of these things, but certainly cribs, pack and plays, high chairs. there are companies that exist that rent those things for a reason. Any of your listeners that are ever questioning this, if they're interested in providing baby gear, have them call up the local baby gear rental company, which most large vacation destination areas, Destin or Smoky Mountains, Tahoe, they all have those companies. Ask them how much they pay in insurance. And if you can find a company that's paying less than $10,000 a year just in liability insurance, I'd be shocked. It's
Wow.
very expensive to do that. And those companies have people signing waivers, going over things, they're inspecting them, making sure they're all set. And yet you as a host, not you, but someone is willing to just leave out a high chair that you've never checked and haven't checked, or maybe you're trusting a cleaner who's got 3 hours to clean your house, that she's made sure that when that high chair tray is slid on, which is a restraint that holds the child in, that it actually works, and the last renter who wasn't familiar with it didn't break the clip trying to get their child out. And now that child has fallen out. We've seen these lawsuits, we've seen these accidents. Same with pack and plays. I was in the Outer Banks not long ago, and there were some houses that had cribs in them. I couldn't find a crib in any of those rentals that hadn't been recalled, like years ago. 83%, 84% of all cribs have been under some sort of consumer product safety recall. And here they are still in existence. And when you ask people, they're like, well, this was my son's crib. We just thought we'd leave it for the renters. We thought it was nice. And the bikes, I show up, it's the worst line I hear in this business when I show up and somebody says, oh yeah, well, those are our old bikes. We thought we'd leave those for the renters. It's like, great. That's really nice that you've left them your old bike. And who knows if the last renter adjusted the seat and didn't tighten it, or loosened the handlebar to adjust it, didn't tighten it. And now the renter's going down a hill and they do it. So if you want to do that, you can. You got to have a very good inspection program in place. Every single rental, each time, check that crib, check that high chair, check that kayak to make sure it doesn't have a leak and the paddle isn't broken, and check the golf cart, make sure all the tires have the right air pressure. I mean, you've just got to have a thorough inspection program, because that's what the professionals do. So my advice is go down the path that your wife is leading you.
Yeah.
Work with that local baby gear rental company, and who knows, maybe they give you a 10% kickback for all the referrals you give them, and in the end you end up making money. But I do know, and this is the worst part about the vacation rental industry across the board, we're trying to apply all these residential products for commercial use, and it doesn't work. And the reality is, I just see a lot of people now that go to Walmart and they buy a pack and play when they get there because they don't want to travel with it. And frankly, it almost ends up being the same cost. The homeowner's not taking on liability. The guest is getting a nice new product that's safe, but the offside is now we've got this pack and play that's left behind that the host is going to throw away because she's not going to offer it. So it's filling up the landfills. So it'd be nice to come up with a solution to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And usually that's good advice, that when I follow my wife's guidance, it works out better for me. So I appreciate that. This interview has been super enlightening. I appreciate it. There's a lot of things that I hadn't considered before that, like I said, there's like a spectrum that I think you could bubble wrap yourself and never leave your house on one end of the spectrum. And then the other one is you go out and do base jumping and, throw caution to the wind. And I think some of the things you bring up are just considerations that people don't have, that are generally smart people, I think. But I think it sounds like this check, I'm going to get a copy of this checklist and safety process and explore it more, because I think this is something that's really, really needed in this industry. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's not a matter of if, it's when. Short-term rentals are the most dangerous sector of the hospitality industry. It's more dangerous than cruise ships, hotels,
Wow.
commercial airline. Last time someone died in a commercial airline in the US was that lady who got sucked out of the window in Southwest, 4 or 5 years ago. But we look, and it's December, and I know of 17 deaths in vacation rentals already. And every one of them was preventable. Fire deaths. This weekend, we had 7 people that were injured in a vacation rental in Littleton, Colorado from a gas explosion. Who was checking the gas? Who was doing annual inspections of the gas for gas leaks in there? So it's all preventable. And to your listeners that are sitting out there going, well, that will never happen to me, I will tell you, I talk to people that would never happen to every day. They call every day wanting advice. This accident has happened. What do I do now? I don't want to be in that business. I want to be in the prevention business. I'm not in the cleanup business. That's not what I'm trying to do. And that's usually who's calling me. Everyone starts off with, I never thought this would happen to me. I've seen your safety checklists. I've been watching you for a few years. This just happened to me. If you were sitting there watching the train go by and thinking it's not your job to get on, that is wrong. And that, if that's the biggest message I can give people who are watching or listening with us today, is I'm talking to you. We are talking to you. You have to take action to make sure that your rental is safe, because if you don't, it will take away from everything that you can imagine. And if someone dies in one of your rentals, you will never be the same again. You won't. I've talked to homeowners that have had deaths in their rentals. It's a life-changing experience. It's horrible, it's tragic. And it's just so frustrating when it was so preventable.
So the best way to find out more is just go to breezeway.io.
Yep, breezeway.io, or email me. I'm happy to take, my office is happy to take emails at safety@breezeway.io. We're the only vacation rental safety or short-term rental safety company in the world. And so I just got back from the UK. So, I mean, we're doing stuff all over the world, and we're just here to help and try and make sure everything goes well.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Like I said, it's super enlightening for this audience. And I know a lot of people will get a lot out of this. So I appreciate your time today, Justin.
Hey, thank you very much.